Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Amakwapam. Today we are going to sew this dress. It's cute, right? Actually, please subscribe and thank you so much for sticking with me and watching my videos. I've truly appreciate it. So let's get right into it. So we are using the lining to cut first, so that we can use the lining as a pattern to cut the main garment. So hair fabric, I'm using 2 yards, which is long length, but the lining I'm using 3 yards because it's short length. So now I'm cutting 1 yard of the lining. So now I've folded like 12 inches. When you measure from the fold to the edge, it's 12 inches. So I'm measuring from the top. It's like a bustier. So I'm measuring from the top down like 7.5, and then to her waist. Her waist is 17. So I will just mark the 17. Yeah, and you just measure 1 inch for seam allowance, because when you're sewing and you don't give a seam allowance, you must sew the whole garment, like sew in the main measurement, and then okay, now we want to get the dart. So you have to measure 4.5, like 4.5 inches from the fold end to towards the end. So you measure 4.5 inch down to the waistline. Once you do that, you just join together, like you do a straight line. You join the dotted points together to get your straight line. Then you measure 1/2 inch from the waistline to the top bodice. You have to measure 1/2 inch on both sides, like half here, half there. Then you measure from your invisible shoulder to 12 inch. So when you get to your 12 inch, which is the apex, from the invisible shoulder to the apex is 12 inch. So you mark the 12, and then you join the 1/2 inch together, like the way I'm doing it. You join them together, but you join from the borders, the top borders, down to the 12 inch, and then you curve it straight to the waist. Now we are cutting. You just have to cut, and then we are good to go. So now we are using our front to cut our back. I want it to be so easy that you don't have to stretch so much, but cutting the back, you need a zip allowance. So getting the zip allowance, since we cut the top, we need to refold the fabric, push it, like measure 2 inches and refold it, and then put your front on it. Make sure you get 1.5 inch at a zip line where the zip is supposed to be, and then you mark it, or you pin the fabric together so that you'll be able to cut it. Yep. Not doing a lazy job, but I'm going to cut through the front and the back. I'm going to cut on that line. Yeah, I'm not going to shape the back. I'm only going to shape the front. So after cutting it, I separate it. I put the back somewhere, and then we'll focus on the front. So now I'm reshaping the front. You remember we measured 1/2 inch on both sides. After cutting through the line, the 1/2 inch was left on both sides. So you need to trim where the lines are. So once you trim it and trim the other part, it becomes curved enough to join. So you need to trim it nicely. So guys, you get how we got, like, you see the allowance between it. When you join it and pin together, you get the curve. Yeah, yeah. This right now we are going to cut the skirts, the fitted skirt that will join the main top to have the dress. So as I said, we've already created an invisible shoulder. So you measure from the invisible shoulder to get the length of the dress. So once you get the length of the dress, you add 1 inch allowance and then you cut. So now you have a front skirt. You fold again for the back skirt. As I said, you need a zip allowance too. So now we are done with the front and back. Now we are cutting our flare. You notice there was a flare on the pencil, yeah, skirt, like from the whole dress there was a flare. So what we need to do is cut our flare. So you measure the waist, you divide the actual waist measurement into 4, because I folded the fabric into 4, and then I got 8. I got actually 6, but I need allowance for zip, so I left added 2 inches to it. So cutting the flare, I start with the top, measure 17 all around from that corner to the other corner. I joined it like on the dotted line. That's how I joined it, and then I cut my flare. So now I'm about to cut. I need to shape it because I realized, did you see the V kind of design in front of the dress? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut that place off so that we can have our style. Remember, we used our lining to cut the dress. Now we are going to use the lining, which is our pattern, to cut the main dress with it on the main fabric. So that's what we are using. So I'm going to use all the pieces I cut with the lining for the main garment. Let's go. Yeah.
Dreaming? dreaming, dreaming? Are we dreaming? Are we dreaming? Are we dreaming?
Guys, we are going to cut our half jacket. If you can see the dress, we have this half jacket that she's wearing, so we are going to cut. So you measure from the shoulder to the waist, which is 17. We use the same measurement, like 17. Then you measure from you measure like 3 inches, because we need the color of the jacket. So you measure 3 inches up, and then you measure your shoulder to your waist, which is 17. Add one seam allowance. Add 1 inch for one seam, the seam allowance. So right now we are measuring. We have to measure the armhole. So you measure from the fold end to the other side, which is 4 inches. You measure 8 inches from the fold to the edge, and then you measure like 1/2 inch upward, but you have to slant it a little. Draw your line from the 8 that you measured down. You have to form a straight line. Then you measure 2 inches all around. As you are going, you just measure 2 inch, then you go to like 1.5, then you go to 1 inch, then you try and curve it. Do it. You curve it as I'm curving it, because we are going to fold it. It's a collar, actually, the jacket collar too. So now we are cutting our sleeve. We are going to use the same fabric for lining as well. So you measure her length, arm length, which is the sleeve length. It's 23. I had to add an allowance. You have to add allowance of 1 inch to make it 24. And then you measure the armhole. The armhole is 10. Then you, after you measure, you curve it and then you cut. That's your sleeve. It's a long sleeve. So ladies and gentlemen, now we are actually joining the front part. We are starting with the top. So where we are, that which is our borders, we are going to pin it and sew. I didn't use interfacing because the fabric is already heavy, and I'm going to line it on top of it. There's a jacket on top of it as well. I don't want it to be saggy, so where I have actually aligned or pinned, that's where we are going to sew. Let's get to our machine. So here we are. We've joined the back and the front. This one is the back. That's the lining and the main garment. So you join the right side to the right side. We want to stitch at the top. Once you are done stitching at the top, we'll do top stitch. We'll do the same thing with the front. So we stitch on top of it like 1/2 inch and then top stitch it. Finish joining them and doing our top stitch. Is ironing time. We have to iron it properly, especially the front one. You iron it properly. Watch and learn. So now we are measuring our top, and the bust is actually 36. So divided by 2, that's 18. So we just measure 18. The rest that we get is the allowance. We divide in 2 and share it on the right and the left side. And then we measure our waist. Our waistline is 26, so divided by 2 is 13. So we measure 13 and do the same thing that we did with the top, which is the bust area. The allowance left, we divide into 2, share for left and right at the same time. So now we are going to sew our half jacket, the shoulder. We are going to sew both because we cut 2. So we are going to sew our lining and our own main fabric as well. We are done sewing the shoulders together, so now we are going to join the lining and the main garment together. We join together and then we'll turn and iron. Watch and learn. So now we are measuring the armhole, and we just trim it a little. The armhole is 9 inches, but normally I measure 8.5 because when you trim it and you put the sleeve inside, sometimes it overlap. So I just go 8.5 and that's it. We are going to sew our sleeve edge and turn it. So we'll take it to our machine, sew half an inch, turn it, and then top stitch it. Once you are done stop stitching, you just go ahead and iron. Make sure you iron it properly and trim off excess fabric. You need to trim off the excess fabric and then iron it so that you can actually measure it correctly. Sometimes when you don't iron, it becomes folded and it becomes so messy. So now we are measuring the sleeve armhole, and the armhole is 9 inches, and then the cuff is 4 inches. So we mark it and then join the armhole of the sleeve to the cuff. So now we are done sewing our sleeve. We are going to join it to our half jacket. You have to join it to the sleeve. So you open it up, right side to right side, and then you join it. First you have to join the 2 seam lines, which is the sleeve line and the main garment, and then you pin it, take it to your machine and sew. So now we are done attaching our sleeve to our half jacket. Now it's about time we add the half jacket to the main top. So you look for the middle of the top, and then you actually pin it down, and then you are going to top stitch it, so that it stays. You do the same thing, you repeat the same thing at the back, but it shouldn't be in between or in the middle of the zip line, but next to it. So with the skirt, we join the front and the back together. We join the back and the front together, and then we pin it. Actually, we had to take our zip allowance from the back, which is 2 inches. We pinned left like we measure the invisible top from shoulder to the hip, and then we actually marked about 5 inches from the skirt line for the zip, and then we marked 7.5 inches for the opening, which is a slit at the back. We had to measure. Right now we are measuring the waistline of the person, and if you are confused and you want to get accurately, or you want it more easier, you measure the top that you've created. You measure from that side to the other, and then you use the amount that you get for the skirt. So you divide into two, then you get your allowance. So if you are dividing, let's say it's 24, you measure and you get 24, the rest of the allowance left is the one you divide into two and share equally on both sides. So when you share, you know that you get your exact measurements. So now you measure the hip. For the person. I'm not really giving out much info about the hip measurement because everybody in their own body type measurement is different from your measurement, and her hip is 38, so I divided into two, and then I shared among. I got the 32 exactly. That's what I marked. So if yours is about 40 or 41 or even lesser than that, you can measure and then share accordingly. Make sure you get it from the hip, then you can actually trim it or curve it the way you want. Now we are joining the flare that we cut. We did the interfacing because we had the lining and the main garment, so we joined them at the edge, right sides together, and then we stitched and we ironed, and now we are actually joining to the skirts, the down skirt. And now we are done with the joining the flare to the skirt. So now we are joining the top to the skirt. We are joining it to make a whole dress. So you pin it all around, take it to the machine and sew, and then you do your knitting because every time you sew and there's raw edges and you are going to join, you need to do knitting. Let's add a zip. I'm going to do it as if I'm doing an invisible zip. So instead of turning the allowance in and stitching on it, I rather turn the zip. I'll just lay the zip on like that and then stitch on it. So voila, there you have it. We are done with our dress. Now we are waiting for my client to wear it because this cannot fit on my mannequin. My mannequin is bigger than her body size. So once she wears it, I'll take a picture and post it on my channel. But for the meantime, enjoy, sew it and wear, and leave a comment if you have any concern. If you want me to want to ask any questions, you can leave a comment down below, but please do subscribe before you leave. Thank you so much for sticking with me and staying with me. God bless.